The
working.
audio's working, the camera's working, it's always good.
But I'm not working because I'm retired.
Yeah, well, you're kind of retired, and normal people's retirement are two different things.
So how did you fall in love with Bemidji?
Well, I grew up in Erskine, Minnesota, about 50 miles west of here, on a farm on the shore of Benson Lake. And Bemidji was our big town to go to. And I was very active in high school athletics and things. And we'd come over to the university and play basketball for our warm-up game for the university game, and played baseball over here. And so it was kind of the neat place, a nice community. And when I graduated from high school, my high school sweetheart and I both enrolled here. So we went through Bemidji State and are graduates of the institution. So it's kind of a special place for us from way back. And I think part of my upbringing, I have a brother 1 year younger than I, and our father had a rheumatic heart, so he couldn't farm at the end. So all through junior high school and senior high school, we basically were running the farm, milking cows by hand and doing all this, playing all the sports. Went off to the university, we sold the cows and rented off the farm. But my wife and I got married in my senior year. She got a job teaching in Bemidji's school system. And when I graduated, the superintendent of schools at Erskine called me up and says, "I want to hire you." And I was majoring in technology and coaching and that sort of thing. And I said, "No, I don't think I should go back to my home school." Well, then he came over to see me, and I said no again. And maybe 2 weeks later, he says, "I'm taking you and Nancy out for a steak." So that night, I signed the line, and I went back to my hometown, and I taught and coached for 3 years. And busy as could be, coaching 3 sports and teaching 6 different preps. And I had driver ed on Saturday, and I thought, wow, I wanted to get back to grad school. And I hadn't even had a chance to think about that. And so after my 3rd year, I resigned. Nancy got a job in Wisconsin. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Stout and got a master's degree. And they said, "Jim, you need to get on and go get your doctorate." So off to Penn State we went, and while I was out there finishing up, I got a contract in the mail from Stout. So they brought me back to Stout. I spent 24 years there. It was really a fun campus, just tremendous change going on there. It's a polytechnic university. And the 3rd year I was there, the president calls me in the office, and I thought, uh-oh, what did I do now? And he says, "Jim, you're fairly new here, so you probably don't even know how this thing works, but every year the students vote on the best professor on campus, and you're it." I said, "Oh, thank you." So that was kind of neat. And a week later, the dean calls me and he says, "Jim, I've got an opportunity for you to go into administration." I said, "No, I love to teach." "Well, you can teach on the side." Well, he said, "I got 2 openings." We prepared, it was the largest school for preparing technology teachers in the world, and had industry and engineering programs as well. And he says, "I've got a major here that needs dramatic change, and there's 1,200 majors in it. And then we have a research program funded by the federal to reinvent that program, and there's 35 majors in there. You take your pick." And I said, "If I'm going to do this, you name me the director of the biggest program, and then you name an interim director on the research program to work with me, and at the end of 1 year, there'll be one and the same." He says, "You can do that?" And I said, "Isn't that your intent?" "Yeah, but I didn't know you could get that done." I said, "Well, let's give it a try." So that's what happened. I got and we worked at the end of the year. We had laid out the whole new program. We had to redo the labs. We had to reschool the faculty. And when I talk about making the train go straight and start making corners, we needed 22 sections of every basic new technology course to get the kids through that. That's massive change. And I had 6 buildings to work with. Well, we got her done, and it was flying. And 2 or 3 years later, he says, I'm naming you the associate dean, and you keep doing this stuff, and I'll take care of the budget. And so away we went, and it was really fun. We developed programs and things that had never ever been done before, like packaging engineering. There isn't such a thing, but the first one was at Stout. And it was it was everything from the legal aspect, the design, to functions, and the labs were just spectacular to do this. And then he retired and I became the dean. And I had half the campus, 7 research centers running all over the world. The first incubator on a university campus 45 years ago. And then ended up basically, we did much of that work. We had 5 courses in the future. And I always taught a course on Monday night, my whole life, even when I was at another college and here at Bemidji State, taught on Monday night. So that was really my fun thing. You could start it and end it at the end of a semester. I left there and took over the presidency of Dunwoody College of Technology, one of the more famous technical colleges in the nation early on. Started by William Hood Dunwoody, who was the CEO of now General Mills. Spectacular guy, but he was history by the time I arrived there. And it had kind of it needed a kick in the pants to sort of reinvent itself. And so I had 29 CEOs on my board out of the Twin City area. And I took them through a planning from the future process, because you never plan to or for the future, because then you're reacting to it. You plan from it. You say, let's bring this in, let's consider that. And it's amazing when you bring those things in, the support is there to fund it, make it happen, and so forth. And we completely redid that campus. And 4 years later, the U.S. government named us one of the 10 top technical colleges in the nation. And it is now added 4 engineering degrees. It is really doing good stuff. And the last year I was there 5 years. I was offered an opportunity to apply for 12 presidencies, including Bemidji State, my alma mater, and I turned them down because I was having so much fun where I was. And school superintendents called me one night and said, hey Jim, we're at a meeting and we're having a little talk time after our meeting, and we decided that we're going to, nominate you for the Bemidji State job. And I said, well, thank you, but I've already turned it down. Well, we heard that, but we want them to go get you anyway because we really need you up here. So I said, well, do what you want. And Nan and I talked it over and said, I got time for one more opportunity. And the thing I missed at Dunwoody was the residential life, all the music, theater, sports. That dimension was not at Dunwoody College of Technology. So I threw my hat in the ring, and when the smoke cleared, I was it. So here I arrived at my whole alma mater, and some things are just like they used to be, and everything was new at the same time. But it was really fun until the second day I met with each of the vice presidents, and the head of the vice VP for administration and finance says, Jim, we're not going to make payroll May 1st. I said, what? No, he says, for 5 years our enrollment's been going down and our costs are going up. May 1st they cross and we're broke. Didn't they tell you? I said, no, they didn't tell me. And he says, by the time we start the first day of second semester, we've got to have the answer to this problem. And I had a lot of stuff I was going to be doing, but that was right on my front plate. And we took after that, and on the first day of the second semester, we laid off 10% of the campus. The other 90% met in the afternoon in a big meeting, and I laid out what would happen in 30 days, 60 days, 180 the first year, the second year. And when I finished up, I says, well, what do you think? And it was stone silent in there. And I just stood on it. And about 15 seconds later, they all jumped up and clapped. They knew there was a problem, but nobody had framed it for them, showed them how to get through it. And here it was. We did it in less than a year. We had it all back. And then we started to build. We went through a process of planning from the future of 85 of the leaders in the northern part of the state. What is it we should be doing? We did all kinds of stuff like that. And brought in a research and development center. The first year we did $1 million out of that. And so a lot of this stuff, you know, you're constantly building and churning and finding and answering. I spent a full day in 30 communities north of St. Cloud over the first 3 years I was here, starting with breakfast. And I'll give you an example. We went to Thief River Falls and started at breakfast at the Community and Technical College. And Orly Gunderson was the president there, and we had our leadership teams. I had 3 van loads of people, you know, from administration and, you know, alumni and finance and stuff like this. And it was really exciting. We ended up hiring 2 people together. One was in the recruiter. So when she was out recruiting for their school, here's what you do then when you graduate after 2 years. You go over to Bemidji State and do that. And then we had a industry technology person we were working together with. And then we were on the radio. We were in the newspaper at 10 o'clock. I went over to the high school and I did a wild and woolly world of tomorrow. And what's your place going to be like in that? And Greenbush and another high school brought all their kids in. This place was packed with kids. And at noon we had 100 of the leaders from the community. We had the chamber and so forth choose the people that needed to be there. And we met with them over lunch saying that the Northwest the Technical College and the Community College in Thief River and us could be a tool in their toolbox for a better tomorrow. And then when that was over, we ended up going ahead with visits to DigiKey, Articat, and the companies like that. And at night, we had an alumni meeting, and we had about 100 alums show up for alumni meeting. It's 9:30 at night, and we're heading home. Pooped out like you can't believe. But there's no doubt we were in town that day, and we knew all their leadership by their first name. They knew us by our first name. And we did that in 30 communities. We knew everybody. We knew their needs. That's where we've got the $1 million to run the research center. It was obvious. We made, you know, we got research projects and scholarship money. They said, wow, nobody's ever done this before, ever. And thank you for coming out. And then a year later, they call and say, are you coming back? I said, no, I got more communities I have to do yet. But I spent my whole life doing those kinds of things. Get your feet on the ground and get up next to people and find out what are their needs and what can we do for you and how can we reinvent a better tomorrow with you. So that was basically, you know, why I ended up in Bemidji. And then it came a time to, you know, retire because I lost my sister-in-law and Nancy's sister both died from cancer that year. And then Nancy got a report on cancer. And I said, I'm 65. I'm going to have to spend some time here doing that. But then I got involved in the community. I was on almost way too many boards already. In fact, the second or third day I was here, I called the head of our economic development group. And I said, I would like to join and help if I could. Oh, we'd like to have you. And so then I called the Chamber of Commerce. And the same guy answered the phone. And I said, oh, I got the wrong number. Sorry, Larry. He says, no, I run both of them, he said. And he says, but you can go on the chamber board if you wanted to. So I did. But I was on the hospital board. I was in television companies. Boy, I was on everything like that. And it seemed like everybody in town who was raising money wanted you to help them wheel and deal and find a way to do those sort of things. So that's basically, I decided Bemidji is one terrific community, but everything that was going on was sort of isolated unless you went and made a date and made it happen. And nobody was making dates with the other one to make it happen. And I thought, this is what we're going to do. We're going to reinvent Bemidji and get everybody on the same page and align the thinking of where we want to do. So there was about 5 of us that I got talking. And we decided we'd call a meeting of the community. And we would ask them, what is it that Bemidji should be looking for? And so we laid this whole thing out, and we had a grand meeting, and we pushed it through some marketing on the television, on radio, and it was in the paper, come to this meeting, and tell us if you were going to live in a place so that it was the best place in the world to live and work and play and raise a family, come to this meeting. And it was packed house. You couldn't get in the room. They were standing in the doorway listening and stuff like that. And we brought Mary Jo Waits out of the Morrison Institute out of Phoenix, who does this for a living. And she talked about the what ifs and what could be and examples like that. And then I gave a little stem winder speech saying, we're looking for some stewards of place here, some people who are really interested in a long-term pull to make this the best community in the nation to do this. And 24 of our leaders stepped up. We had the head of the mayor, we had the county commissioners, the city council members, we had the bankers, we had the head of the university, the head of the airport, the head of the healthcare system. In every walk in life, there was somebody there that could make a difference. And we decided to go out and listen to the community and see what's going on. And I think that was key for us, was to get to the bottom of the thoughts of the people. So we held 140 listening sessions over 8 months, digging for this stuff. And we did it with Jim Collins's model on change, which says, what are we really good at in this community? And those are called your assets. And we had assets that I was ashamed that we weren't exploding already with all the assets we had, but so many of them were coasting, see, and they weren't leveraging the opportunities around them. So we had assets. Another thing is, what are we really, are highly pleasured about, the things that are really precious to us that nobody else is doing as well as you think we are, and those are your values in the community. And then the third one was, what will bring us prosperity? And what will bring us prosperity is your economic engine for this. And so we gathered all of that over 8 months, dove into a strategic planning process, and out of that generated our destiny. And this was starting back in 2001 and 2 when we started the loose conversations, having coffee at the restaurant and checking around stuff. And we were ready to roll this out then. And so we ended up with 17 what we call destiny drivers. And in 2004, we kicked it off in the community. And one of our destiny drivers was a declaration of interdependence, how we rely on each other and leverage each other's talent, and you can scoop it up. And we did it on the 4th of July with bands and balloons and an ice cream social, and we had the destiny up there on a big 4x8 sheet, and we gave everybody a dry marker. They stood in lines to sign off on the destiny. And then the very next Sunday then, on the front page of the Bemidji Pioneer, we rolled out a destiny driver, something to be accomplished in order for us to achieve that destiny. And there was a picture, a framing of the idea, the name of a person, and a phone number to call if you want to help chase that in the community. And so every Sunday, one came out to plant 10,000 trees a year for 10 years, to take our hospital and make it a #1 regional hospital case, redo our airport, because it is the 4th busiest airport, but it was kind of like pretty shaggy when you walked in there and stuff. So we completely, needed to redo the airport. You don't get outside and walk on the ground anymore. I remember when I was back at Stout and we used to go over to Green Bay, and you'd fly over to Green Bay and you'd get out and walk on the ground, and I said, this is an NFL city and you're walking on the ground? Well, that changed fast over there too. But see, you don't go out, there's a causeway to come in here now as you go to the airport. But we fly all the UPS from here to Denver. Going, God, it's one busy place. And so we had all of these 17 things going, and at the end of 17 weeks, people were waiting for the next one and the next one, and they would call and say, is something going to be included? Better wait and see, At the end, those 17 projects had 450 people signed up to work on them. Now, some of them, our team, we did the rowing on them. Some of them, we just did the steering, because somebody, the Rotary Club took on the tree planting one, and different groups were natural to take them on and go with them. But we'd have report backs, every month to see how things are going. And 4 years later, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce called and said, can you send a team out to a black tie event in Pittsburgh? We'd like to recognize Bemidji. That is unbelievable what you are doing there, because really, this community had spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and our team of stewards had zero budget. But it was, you figure out how you're going to finance, how they're going to put these things together. And that night they named us the most innovative city in the nation. Bang, we had to teach them how to say Bemidji. So we came rolling home, and with our next board meeting we had, it said, this is unbelievable, but remember how we started? This is going to be the best place in the nation to live and work and play and raise a family. We were it now. But we knew we had a lot more to do. And if we just sat down then, it would go away. In 5 years, you'd have to jack it up and do it again. Let's keep flying. So we rolled out Bemidji Leads 2.0. And wow, was that something. It made the first one look like small potatoes, because now parts of the community were into the reinvention thing themselves. And the first year or two, they kept coming to our meeting and saying, do we have permission to do this? Permission? We're not giving permission to anybody. This is you to do. But we will help you do this sort of thing. We'll show you the way. We can talk finances. We can talk all of those kind of things. Really, in the way it went. And wow, we must have about 30 things going now. And one of the more spectacular things going on here is the reinvention of doing things in a brand new way. Like First Lutheran Church, a 75-year-old organ died. And we had, I think, 6 or 7 organ companies we're looking at, and we decided with one out of Montreal. And they came now and we're negotiating what this is going to be, and it's a pretty big whopping organ. And one of our church members, it was the former head of music at Gustavus Adolphus, who retired up here. And he got into the Native American flute, and how you built them and how you played them, and there was big ones and little ones and stuff like this. And pretty soon he is teaching them their flute, and around our church it was in a lot of the services, beautiful, kind of a haunting wind sound. And we asked this fellow who was designing our organ, have you ever heard of that? Never heard of it, he said. Well, see, would you like to hear it? So we got some big ones, little ones, and they were demonstrating, and he's listening, and he says, I can do that. And so the first organ in the world with a Native American flute rank inside of it is at First Lutheran Church in Bemidji. Those are the kind of things that were happening. Probably one of the more economic things that has really kicked this town is the startup of an entrepreneurs group and supporting entrepreneurs. And we started an entrepreneur day every week. And so every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, down at the Mayflower building, 30, 40, 50 people would show up. And one person would get up and they would lay out their idea of what they're doing. Some were brand new inventions. Some were, I'm taking my company here and doing this. And they do like a 20-minute presentation of what this idea is. Then they'd open it up to the group. Some of them were critical and they'd drill into the hole, and some had the answers, and here's 3 ways to do that, and here's the contact. By the time that hour was over, their head was so full of stuff that it was just like, wow, where do I start? And then we built a team of mentors. We had 18 of them that we are working with them, and they're home run mentors, as good as you find anywhere in the world. Dave Olderman, you know, he owned the oldest firm on Wall Street, the Cleveland Cavaliers professional basketball team. He lives on a lake out here. They're all over this place. And heck, I just love being around those kind of people. They're really fun, you know. But so as this thing was working along like this, we started with 7, and 4 years later, 250 entrepreneurs had gone through that program. We in that 4 years, we averaged about 14 new companies every year. There's 51 new companies in Bemidji that weren't here 4 years ago. That's a whale of a, you know, and some of them got 30, 40 employees already, and they're just doing dynamite stuff. We are all tooled up to go with the so-called Bemidji 3.0. We're not even necessarily calling it that but there's another lift going to happen in Bemidji, and we've hired a futurist to take us through this, who's from Australia, who operates all over the world. In fact, the day he came in here, he had been in England one day, Scotland another day, into Bemidji, and he's heading to Maine. That's the scope of this guy. And he goes into the school systems, he goes into the universities, he goes into the companies, and works another dimension of thinking from the future again. And then COVID hit us just as he was ready to. So as soon as we get COVID taken care of, we're going to take that thing for the next step and take Bemidji again on another ride. I'm 83 years old. I'm full of gas yet, but I'm seeing a lot of people stepping up and saying, let's take the lead on this sort of thing. And we must have 200-300 people in our community that are all jazzed up to be doing something to really make this a good place to be. So very, very fortunate to be a part of something like that. It's really exciting.
This is one of the lowest income areas around.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of people will say, oh yeah, well they got lakes, they got resorts, they got all this other stuff. It's obviously a very well-to-do area, and in reality, it's not.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to do this kind of work in a community like Bemidji. It is a spectacular, beautiful place. As the chamber says, we have 400 fishing lakes. Well, some of them might be 30 miles away, but so do the people who work in Bemidji. come every morning, they come streaming in. The city itself is not a very large city. We're maybe less than 18,000 people now. And so where do all the people live? They live out in the woods. We're surrounded by the 3 largest Native American tribes on the north and the east and on the southwest are there. Over 30% of the people who live in the city are Native American. We have a lot of homeless and transient work and this sort of thing. And so while on one hand, we have done some grand things, but there was an article written in a New York newspaper about the poorest city in every state across the nation. And guess what? Bemidji is the poorest city the city proper, in the state of Minnesota. Now, if we're the poorest city and you can do this kind of work with ideas and so forth to move it along, it says two things. We got a lot more work to do yet. In fact, we've hardly even started. On the second hand, if we can do it, anybody can. So, one example, we have the best Wi-Fi in the United States out here in the rural woods. Paul Bunyan Communications, I came up out of Dunwoody College in the Twin Cities, and I live 10 miles north of town. And I got to get my Wi-Fi and all that out here. It was better 10 miles north of Bemidji on the lake than it was in downtown Minneapolis when I left there in '94. Unbelievable. And there's 5,500 square miles of fiber to the premise. And they're making money at it and overbuilding neighboring communities right now. And so anybody can do it, but many communities just sit there and wait, well, we need help to do this. Well, they're planning to or for the future rather than from it, see. So that makes a difference on that. And I would say all our innovations that are happening here, they could happen anywhere. But you have to have the idea, you got to have the drive, the kick in the back to get going, and you can make it happen. So, I grew up on a farm without electricity or running water. I know what it is to light the kerosene lamp to read, get your elementary work done. And I went to a country schoolhouse with 28 kids, 1 through 8. That's where I started out. And here I am traveling all over the world doing stuff. Now in retirement, people are still calling, say, can you do this? Can you do that? I said, well, I'd rather not call this person and that person, because I got enough to do for a person. I'm dreaming up new stuff for now, see, so.
Wonderful. The thing that I hear all the time is, well, we can't do it because of this or that or something else. We can't do it because we don't have any manufacturing. We can't do it because nobody wants to live here. We can't do it because we don't have tourism. We can't do it because it's not pretty here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excuses.
Yeah. And I think here, we don't always talk that the technical college or the university can meet your needs, but I know who can. My first year when I came here, I invented the Northern Tier High Technology Corridor from Superior to Fargo. And there's 32 higher education institutions in that thing. And it was amazing when you start thinking about all this talent that we have. And we built it was a K-Station software system. We were the first users of it in the nation. It was developed by IBM, and this is back in '94, remember. And so you could say, I've got a corrosion problem, and here's the connection for it. At this university is the name and the phone number of the person to do those sort of things. And my biggest problem as I went to the colleges and universities to set that up was, are you going to compete with us? No, we want you to work with us. We want to bring things to you. They were so suspicious of you. It's just like, they're competitive. Don't let them know anything because we're going to try and get ahead of you. And our approach was the opposite of doing those sort of things. We have here in Bemidji the #1 immersible foreign language camps in the world. I mean, everything, when you go out to the Concordia language villages, there's the Norwegian camp, there's the French camp, there's camps, and the architecture and everything, the minute you walk in there, you're immersed in that language. And if you stay 1 week, 2 weeks, or the whole summer, and they have both for young people and adults, for the military and everybody else that's going through there. Well, when I was setting up this high-tier corridor, I go over to Concordia College and I'm talking to the president, and he says, I don't think, this is a liberal arts school. I don't think we have anything that would be of use of anything. And I said, oh, don't you have a science, chemistry? Yeah, we got that. Do you have physics? Yeah, we got that. Do you have, biology? Yeah, we've got that. You got mathematics? You got computers? I say, stuff. Well, what about foreign languages? And he stopped dead. He had the best in the world, and he couldn't make the connection between the Concordia language villages and any of his other academic areas had the same opportunity. But blinders were in front of them. They were doing the academic thing rather than reaching out and taking it to the world to experience it. That's what the success is. That's what makes it fly. I love history too. Mm-hmm. But I also love the future. And, we're not going to live in the past. And if we don't know what the future is, we're asking for trouble. Take Marvin Windows and World. If you're going to be a manufacturing company and you're at the end of the country up against the Canadian border, how in the world can you compete? Not only do you compete, but you set the pace. And they made a mistake on an ad about doing something, a word custom or something like that was in their ad, meaning we'd make special one just for you. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. And they sell the stuff all over the world. Unbelievable what they do and where they're sitting. You should say, never work there. Never work there. They know how to make it go. Mm-hmm. And they, and how do they schedule things coming through the facility? Yeah. It's where is the truck going? So the truck goes with a load to Maine, or the truck, so that's what schedules the loads as they move that stuff around. And those big old yellow trucks come rolling through here. it's pretty fun. The store it all started, DigiKey in Thief River Falls. Holy smokes. It is unbelievable. They're doubling and tripling their business out of there. It's the largest, electronic distribution system in the country in a little town up there. Why? It's his hometown. And you call in an order, it's picked in 3 minutes. Boom, out it goes. I mean, the process, the thinking of making this, since we're sitting here, how do we compete then? Rather than saying we can't do it. Edgar Hatin was the family that's invented Polaris in Roseau.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then he left that, and actually he was in Alaska kind of catching his breath and stuff, and he sees this job center on the street, and he walks in there and it says free aptitude test. So he thought, well, I'll take the aptitude test. So he takes the aptitude test and he say, come back tomorrow and we'll tell you what you're good in. So he says, I come back tomorrow, and the lady in the front desk seemed kind of nervous, and she said, oh, you got to talk to the manager. So he says, when I go back and talk to the manager, he takes out this thing and he starts humming, and he says, Mr. Hatin, I have to tell you that you're not good for anything. So he says, I went home and I started Arctic Cat. And then he went to see his mother in a nursing home, and she was tied into a wheelchair, kind of hanging with a towel around. And he says, boy, does that look pretty bad. So he invents, her name was May Industries, and he built the Barco Lounger of wheelchairs. Spectacular things. And then he's up in his high 70s when he starts what's the initials? ABC. It's a Bobcat company over in Grand Rapids that doesn't. Bobcats are terrible for tearing up the turf because they break wheels and spin them around. And they made the best machines like this. You could drive them on a golf green and it wouldn't disturb them. And that thing was sold for close to $1 billion, 800 and some. That's his fourth company. And living up here, and he's not good for anything, well, you can do those sort of things. And so at Bemidji State, we don't offer the doctorate here, but we have a recognition of outstanding work. And it's called a Distinguished Minnesotan, and every commencement we make an award like that. So I go over to tell Edgar he's going to get this award. Well, tell me about it, he says. I'm having coffee in the restaurant with he and his wife, and I'm explaining that, you know, Kurt Carlson and all these people in every field were home run names. And he says, I'm one of them, he says. Yes, I said, we're going to recognize you at commencement this year. So that night at the dinner, he was so excited. He was at the head table. He couldn't stay there. He had to go around and talk to everybody. It was so fun. I thought if there was anybody who's been a distinguished Minnesotan named by Bemidji State University, I don't think anybody enjoyed it more than Edgar. Oh, life is good.
That's wonderful.